Republicans and Democrats in Kansas recently passed a tax bill that they think can help to repair some of the massive damage done to their state by Governor Sam Brownback when he and other Republicans massively cut taxes, both for individuals and for corporations. That led to a huge gutting of revenue for the state, even though they said it wouldn't have that result, that there'd be so much economic activity generated that it'd more than make up for it. Well, we ran that experiment. It failed horribly. That led to years of shortfalls, massive cuts in education spending, transportation spending, among other programs. It's a huge problem for Kansas. And so Republicans and Democrats have come together to try to fix that. Under House Bill 2178, there's income breakdowns. We're not going to go through all of them, but basically, it's minor increases to the tax brackets. I mean, we're talking about very low amounts of taxes, a couple of percentage points. And yes, it's state tax on top of your federal tax, so it does add up. We're talking about small numbers there that, at the state level over a year, do actually add up to a lot of revenue. The legislation would also restore a tax deduction for medical expenses, and it eliminates a tax exemption for limited liability companies that more than 330,000 entities currently use. Now, all of that together, what they're trying to fix, has left them with hundreds of millions of dollars that they're lacking every year. Kansas Department of Revenue estimates that the bill being considered would generate about $590 million next year, which would almost perfectly plug the shortfall that is anticipated with a little bit of extra money as well. So they put that forward, vetoed by the Republican governor of Kansas, Sam Brownback. He says, "I'm vetoing it because Kansas families deserve to keep more of their hard-earned cash. I'm vetoing it because it is retroactive and thus incredibly unfair." Well, yeah, they have kept a little bit more of their cash over the past few years since the big tax cuts were put in. And maybe it is unfair, but maybe it's also unfair to the kids of Kansas whose education has become much worse, much more poorly funded. Roads, the formerly paved roads in America that are now gravel or dirt roads because they can't afford to pave them anymore. I would say that that's unfair to Kansas as well. Now, he had a counter proposal. So instead, we could raise the taxes by a little bit, or we can do what the governor wants. Take a look at this and see where he's coming from. The governor's budget proposal relies on increases in cigarette and liquor taxes, which of course are regressive taxes. It also sells off annual tobacco settlement payments received by the state, and it draws from a long-term investment fund, which means that you hit the poor for their vices in the short term, and you potentially endanger the long-term investments of the state, just so you don't have to raise taxes a little bit. But here's the thing, he vetoed it, then the House responded and actually overrode his veto, 85-40, clearing the threshold narrowly. Unfortunately, later on in the day, the Senate also voted to override it, but missed the threshold by 3. They had a majority, but not the supermajority necessary. Now, this isn't the end of it, and this is not a good sign for Brownback, regardless of whether or not this particular bill has been killed, because there are many people, both Democrats and Republicans, who do want to raise taxes, but have problems with this bill for one or two small little things that can perhaps be ironed out in the future. And regardless of what it ends up looking like, right now it looks like bad news for Sam Brownback.
At the end of the day, because the Senate could not override it enough, the rich get to keep their tax cuts, and your kids don't get an education in Kansas. Enjoy. I love how he's like, it's so unfair to the rich. Your kids, though, well, they're not going to get books, so good luck with reading and writing. Anyway, you see how unfair you're being to the rich. And remember, he gave them tax cuts. This would, bring back some of the revenue that they were already paying. But remember, he cut the taxes to the bone, and then said it's okay because it'll create more revenue. But it didn't. It wasn't true. It was a lie. And it was proven to be a lie.
We gave it years. They always say, give it a chance. We gave it years. It doesn't work. It ruins states when you do this.
So politically, good news, bad news here. I think the deeply conservative Republicans in Kansas, in the House, voting 85-40 increase taxes. Yeah. That is unprecedented. Mm-hmm. And that is a sea change, and I believe is the beginning of a turning of the tide, okay? Now, and remember, that's not just Kansas. The Koch brothers, I don't know if you remember the story, a couple of years ago came in and kicked out even the really conservative Republicans in Kansas, but that weren't just beholden to them. They put in even more extreme right-wingers into that Kansas legislature. And even so, 85-40,
yeah, that's true,
saying raise taxes because it's Now I got people in my district saying their kids don't have books. We can't do essential government services because how much are you going to cut taxes for the rich? So now that this Kansas revolution has begun, I find that super encouraging. And by the way, Sam Brownback, literally the most unpopular governor in the country right now. His popularity rating is down to 26 points. He barely survived re-election. And why did he? For two reasons. One, Republicans always have an advantage in money, so he spent more money in his re-election, tricking people, doing propaganda, doing ad after ad after ad. But secondly, and I think probably more importantly, because people were already pretty sick of him, so I think it didn't take much to topple him in that last election that he barely won, the Democrats, as always, ran to the right.
Yeah.
Now, I just told you, Kansas conservative, I'm not unaware of that fact. So I'm not saying the Democrat running in that race should be like, I'm going to ban all guns, right? That's not a good idea, and I understand that. And you've got to be responsive to your own citizens. And if the people of Kansas want to have guns everywhere, then they're going to have guns everywhere. That's democracy, okay? So at the same time, running pro-corporate Democrats under the guise of it being centrist is not working. Brownback was eminently defeatable. And yet again, for the millionth time in a row, the Democratic Party blew it because they thought, hey, let's go right wing. Go populist. Go populist and you will destroy the Brownbacks of this country. It's just somebody's waiting to say, hey, man, my kid doesn't have a book. My kid doesn't have a book and he can't read. How much are you going to give to the goddamn rich? You will wipe him away, man. You'll throw out so many Republican governors, you won't know what to do with it. But
it'll make your head spin. You'll be so proud of what you've done. So proud.
God damn. All right.
There's going to be a lot of love when you make this campaign switch.
Yeah, the Democrats are the worst party ever. JusticeDemocrats.com. Yeah. Go do a strong version of the Democratic Party, and this whole electoral map will look completely different in 4 years. JusticeDemocrats.com. Run real strong progressives, and you will maul these guys.